Voting rights should always be bipartisan. It is not the difference between right and left, but the difference between right and wrong. Mr. Chairman, I've come here today to stress the critical need for the federal government to act urgently to protect the sacred right to vote. America is a land where possibility is born of democracy. Our vote is our voice, a chance to help determine the direction of our country and our own destiny within it. Record numbers of Georgians used their voices and voted in the last election. And in response to this swell in Democratic participation, politicians in our state legislature responded not in celebration, but with retaliation. They could have gotten busy having not seen the outcome that some of them wanted. They could have gotten busy changing their message or adjusting their policy. Instead, they got busy changing the rules as if the democracy belongs to them and not the people. We've seen voter suppression bills since the election in November and January all across this country. 360 voter suppression bills in 47 states, an increase of 100 bills since I highlighted this issue on the Senate floor just a month ago. As of today, 5 of these bills, including in my own state of Georgia, have been signed into law. These efforts vary in exactly how they suppress voting. Some new laws, like in Georgia, will make it harder to vote by mail. Some will make lines that are already too long longer, harder to cast a provisional vote. The new law also gives state politicians, some of the same politicians who still today refuse to acknowledge President Biden's lawful and decisive victory, the power to override local election officials. We may be tempted to dissect these bills as if analyzing them piece by piece makes them more rational. But that narrow analysis only obscures the larger, unmistakable picture. This is a full-fledged assault on voting rights, unlike anything we have seen since the era of Jim Crow. For all of their differences in exactly how they suppress the vote, what these bills all share is that they are predicated on the big lie, that the outcome of our last elections were the result of fraud, or at least the presidential election. I guess the members who won their elections are okay with that outcome. The truth is, politicians in their craven lust for power are willing to sacrifice our democracy by using the big lie as a pretext for their true aim. Some people don't want some people to vote. To be sure, we've seen these kinds of voter suppression tactics before, aimed at the same communities. They are a part of a long and shameful history in Georgia and throughout our nation. But that history is also filled with moments of hope and promise, when our nation has come together in recognition that preserving our democracy is absolutely essential. Voting rights are preservative of all other rights. Just 15 years ago, the United States Congress reauthorized the Voting Rights Act of 1965 under a Republican president, and with a bipartisan vote in the Senate of 98-0. At the time, our colleague, Senator Mitch McConnell, praised its passage, declaring it a law that would make a difference for all of America. Many members of this committee, including the chair and the ranking member, enthusiastically voted in favor of it. That was 2006. Why shouldn't voting rights legislation be just as bipartisan now in 2021 as it was in 2006? Voting rights should always be bipartisan. It is not the difference between right and left, but the difference between right and wrong. Many argue that the United States Senate is dysfunctional and incapable of governing in a bipartisan manner. We can boldly refute these claims by coming together not as Democrats or Republicans, but as supporters of democracy itself to pass the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. Together, these two bills would turn the tide against state-level voter suppression proposals all across our country. These pieces of legislation would expand and protect access to the ballot for every citizen, Democrats, Republicans, and independents. Because strengthening our democracy does not benefit one party over another. Instead, democracy reform benefits all of us by ensuring that our government is of the people, by the people, and for the people. John Lewis was my parishioner. I was honored on many occasions to stand with him as we took people to vote after church at Ebenezer. He understood that our democracy transcends all else, and he nearly died on the Edmund Pettus Bridge defending it. Today, our country faces the most widespread assault on voting rights since that era. The four most powerful words in a democracy are "the people have spoken." The highest and most sacred action that the Senate can take is to protect the right of the people like it did in 1965. As we move forward in this discussion, I've asked myself on many occasions, what would have happened had we not passed federal legislation affirming the covenant of our democracy in 1965? Where would Georgia be? How would it prosper on the other side of a segregationist curtain? If we had not acted in 1965, what would our country look like? Surely I would not be sitting here, only the 11th black senator in the history of our country and the first black senator in Georgia. And maybe that's the point. It concerns me that some don't hear the irony in their statement that we must protect minority rights in the Senate while refusing to protect minority rights in the society. We've got to act. History is watching us. Our children are counting on us. And we must pass federal voting rights legislation no matter what.